Hi everybody, thank you for joining me here at Home with Melissa. And today what I want to talk about is lousy soil and worms. And let me move back here a little bit so you can maybe get a better look. What made me think of doing this video today with you is this raised bed that I'm sitting on. Now this was created toward the end of last growing season, and the reason it was created is because it's a little bit raised, which makes it easier for me to access. And it was, like I said, late in the growing season, and I had some things that I wanted to make sure got in the ground, and those were, tomatoes and peppers. And so this raised bed was built so that I could access it well. And I'm going to have to dig these. This is just too compacted. So this is an example of lousy soil. And it's because late in the growing season like that, I didn't have any mulch left. I didn't have any good soil left that I had prepared and developed for myself with which to fill this bed. So all that was done was a hole was dug right next to the bed and just dirt taken out of the yard and put in here. Now, things have been growing. I have grown things in this yard for years, and the soil is continually enriched with natural fertilizing things. For example, cut leaves and twigs and things like that that don't have roots on them, so they won't grow things that I don't want to have growing in those areas. Fish waste, things like that. And if a big hole is dug in the yard, generally at the bottom of that hole before I fill it again, I will place sticks and twigs and kitchen waste, eggshells, banana peels, vegetables, things that weren't processed, and things that aren't meat or dairy. And the reason you don't want to put meat and dairy things in the ground or in a compost pile is simply that you don't want to attract rats and things like that that would be attracted to those things. That's the main reason. But anyway, the dirt was taken from next to this. There was this nice and rich soil. I know that it's got the macronutrients and the micronutrients in it. Yeah, it was a bit of a decision to make in digging it up, because I really do support more the no-dig methods of gardening. And the reason for that is that as we learn more, we learn that beneath the surface of the soil, you have various bacteria and even fungi that help with the growth of various plants, and that it's a whole living ecosystem. And when you dig into it, you can sometimes cut into, say, a larger, say, fungus that is really helpful, and you're damaging that organism. One single organism can stretch a great distance, and so when you dig, it disrupts it. And so it can be a better idea to simply plant above that, and what you add as you plant this raised bed is, or plant on top of what's existing in a lasagna gardening kind of way. What you're adding then becomes part of the whole functioning ecosystem, as opposed to disrupting things that might be helpful. Now, I had to make the decision. I wanted to get the tomatoes and peppers in. The only way to do it was to have that hole dug. So that's the way we went. Now, deep in that soil is this. Now, it's not a stone, it's clay. Look at that. Clay soil. It squishes together in this impenetrable kind of, see that? This impenetrable lump. And again, as we've said before, it's all about what you want to get out of your property. Clay is the worst thing to grow in. It's so dense that small roots can't make their way through it. Water tends to just run off of it. It's just not good. Now, if you have clay soil, basically, see, I have nice rich soil down so far. Beneath that, it's clay. I have a clay shelf under it. So I will hit clay as I'm digging, but at first, on top of that, it's nice soil. But if you have clay soil and you want to make it a little bit better to grow in or things, because you're probably not going to have any success growing in something that has just clay. About the only way to really improve that is to add things to it. You add mulch, and you add gardening soil that you maybe purchase or what have you, compost, things like that, and you just till it in with the clay. And as time goes by and you continuously do this, if you do it year after year, it will loosen up that soil. It will lighten it up. The amount of clay as compared to other things will, of course, as you add these other things, be less, and the soil will be better to grow in. Now, this soil here has some clay, and it has some regular soil. It also has a lot of, you can see things growing there that I didn't want to have grow there, but stones and rocks. And if you're growing particularly root vegetables like carrots and turnips, beets, radishes, things like that, where the fruit that you want to have is growing and expanding beneath the soil, they're going to have a hard time doing what they want to do if they have to fight with stones in order to do it. So basically, and then you can see how I'm having to, when I pull up weeds being plants that I don't want to have growing in here, I want other things growing in here. Look at that. It's the tops. The roots are still there. And that particular plant wasn't something that has deep roots. It's simply that this soil doesn't have enough stuff in it to lighten it up. It compacts really easily. Look at that. Look how compacted. There's the clay and there's just the compacting soil. It's not light. It's going to be hard for the things to get through. That said, on the spectrum of great to worthless, it doesn't fall completely at the worthless stage. It's just lousy. It's not good. And the reason for it was, again, like I said, the clay and stuff, but it does have in it the macro and micronutrients and bacteria and things like that it needs, that would be helpful to the growth of the plants, because it was taken from this really rich soil here. And because of that, in spite of it being fairly lousy soil to grow in, to garden in, because of the compaction in the rocks, I still managed to get quite a few tomatoes out of this bed last year. So that's something to be aware of, is that even with somewhat lousy soil, you can harvest things. But I planted tomatoes, peppers, and a lot of other things in this little bed last year, and the tomatoes did well. Some of the herbs died completely, probably because of having delicate roots and the clay. I didn't get much in the way of peppers, so the better your soil, the better your harvest. It doesn't mean if you don't have great soil that you're not going to be able to get something out of it, but the more you can do to improve your soil, the better off you will be as a result. This bed here, all of these unwanted plants have to come out, and because the soil that's in here is so compacted and reaches to the top of the bed, the majority of this soil is going to have to be taken out and put back in its little holes. Before I do that, I'm going to put some sticks and twigs and plant parts minus the roots in that hole, and then bury those things, and that'll help enrich the soil further. I might even put some kitchen scraps in there. But a lot of this will come out, and what will be added is some compost mulch, better soil, things like that, things that are lighter, that won't compact, that give a little bit of texture to the soil, and that'll help make it nicer for the things that I intend to plant here. And what I'm going to plant, we're still in the early part of the season, so it'll be lettuces and things like that more than anything else. I think that I'm just going to basically face the facts that a lot of these raised beds are going to be completely used, because a lot of them already are planted for the season, which is great. I'm not as nearly as behind as I normally am at this time of year. So a lot of these beds are planted up. New ones will have to be built in order to accommodate things that need to be planted later in the season. But we're going to take this out and improve it. And we've already gone over how you do that. Another thing that's really good about having lighter soil is it'll make it easier for the worms. And you can put down, say you're doing a lasagna gardening or raised beds. Something really helpful to do is put down, like, I go with 8 to 12 sheets of newspaper, thickly piled on the very bottom of the area that I'm going to be working with before I put anything else there. And the reason I do that is it suppresses the plants that I don't want to have growing there, because it doesn't allow them to get the sunlight and things they need. So it suppresses those, and at the same time it attracts worms. If you lift up that paper after a couple of weeks and you look, you're going to see a lot of earthworms beneath there. Earthworms are great for your garden. They are absolutely great. I can't overstress this. if you have any friends that tell you, you better watch, those worms will eat your roots, please know that they're just pulling your leg, because worms don't even have mouths. They don't have mouth parts. So when you add worms to, say, your compost pile to help break it down, it's not that they're going through and eating things. We say, meaning it more figuratively than literally, that when we put worms in our compost, they help eat the things. They're eating the stuff in the pile and breaking it down. Well, that's eating in quotes, because actually what happens is bacteria break them down, help them to decompose. And then the worms come along and soak in basically the broken down things left behind by these bacteria, and so they soak in the nutrients and things and use it that they need to go on with their lives, and they excrete something that's even further broken down on a cellular level, and that's enriched by what's gone through their gut. And those are worm castings or worm poop. And they also help they dig little tunnels as they're going, and as they tunnel through, they don't dig with their hands, but they tunnel through, and it creates these little holes, these little passageways that allow water and nutrients to flow through your soil and air to get to your roots and things like that. So in every way you look at it, worms are healthy and good for your garden. And a lot of people will tell you, well, you have to get the red wigglers. Red wigglers are the most popular worm with gardeners right now. And they really are very fast and efficient at helping to break things down. And so that's great. And probably I would say, yeah, okay, sure, they might be the quickest and most efficient. But it's not that other worms aren't good too. I mean, any worm. Your big night crawlers work as well. Any of these worms do a great job in your garden, and any of them are welcome. I know that in a raised bed down there where I have my goji bush, and I think in a previous video I whined about how someone, thinking they were being helpful, cut down to the ground my goji and one of my red currants, and I was really sad about that, but I'm really happy to report that yes, they did grow back from the roots this year. So I might not get fruit from them this year, but I will eventually. And the goji is in a raised bed down there, and I was getting rid of unwanted plants that had grown up since last growing season, and everything, and working in some things into the soil to help enrich it and things. And as I did so, I was encountering, I couldn't go this far without finding a worm. And I was so excited. So this is probably going to have some worms in it, but with as compacted as it is and things like that, I'm probably not going to have as many worms in here as I would like. What you can do if you want to have more worms in your garden, you can actually raise worms, and they'll reproduce and make a huge population that you can then just take and add to your garden as you want to. And I do that indoors. And I just raise them in a tote. It doesn't produce any smell or anything. And you feed them kitchen waste. And they, the bacteria helps break it down, and then they break it down further, and it just composts it more quickly than it would without the worms. And the worms are getting food, and they're reproducing, which gives you the worm castings and also a population of worms that you can take and throw in your garden if there's somewhere there that you really think needs more worms. And so what I'll probably be doing actually is releasing a lot of the worms that I'm breeding and growing and caring for indoors into the outdoors for this season to allow them to do their work and repopulate in the garden. And then I'll just raise more inside. They do great. They do great, and it's a super easy thing to do. And shredded newspaper is a good thing to give them. So basically, if you get newspapers and things like that, and you think, well, what am I going to do with them after I read them? I'll just throw them in the garbage. You could be doing that too, and it's a helpful thing then, and you're recycling that newspaper. And so some will be released here after I do the enrichment, because I don't want to put them in here and then start working things in, because then I'll probably chop some of them in half. And if you want to get worms, I did a video on how to raise them for free. And you can do that by just collecting some from your yard and stuff, and then feeding them and getting them to grow. Go ahead and watch that video if you want some more tips. But you can also go, once the fishing season has started, which it has now here, You can go to places that sell live bait, and you can buy red wigglers, you can buy night crawlers, you can buy a lot of these things for just a few dollars, and that's enough to start your population going. You get a dozen or so of them, and they do their thing, and you feed them, and fine. It'll work well for you. I can almost guarantee it. If you do things the right way in raising them, it's a really simple thing to do, and it's really helpful in the long run. So here we're going to be enriching the lousy soil, and we're going to be then adding worms, which will further enrich the soil, and eventually this will be great soil. And you can take those tips for what they are. If you have anything you want to ask, go ahead and drop a question in the comment section. And likewise, if you have any tips for people on how to fix lousy soil, it's compacted, it's got rocks. I mean, rocks, you can just remove them, obviously, but rocky, compacted, clay soil. If you've got more tips that you want to share, please drop that in the comment section, because anything that can help the rest of us out is a great thing, and we'll be happy to hear from you. I know I like reading your comments, even if I don't have a chance to get back to people right away who've left comments. And sometimes, for some reason, I know I have one person right now I really want to respond to who actually left comments for me a while ago, and for some reason in my notifications section it shows up that this person left me comments, but then when I go into the section of YouTube that shows my videos where I could respond to her, her comments don't show up, and I don't know why. So I'm not able to respond even though I'd like to, and sometimes I don't get to. But please know that every comment I get, I read it as soon as I get it, and I really enjoy hearing from you guys, and I'm sure a lot of our other viewers and friends really like it too. So like I said, if you have anything to add about how you can fix problems with poor soil and about worms and things, please feel free, and we'll enjoy it. And in the meantime, you go out there and do what you can and enjoy yourself. Live, love, learn, laugh, have a great time, and we'll see you again soon here, I hope. Thanks. And hello. I gotta go. Bye.